Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast, Uncut. I am Herb Perez. Today I have a very special guest from my past. We came up together in martial arts, we trained at the same school, we fought with the same people, and we pursued our dreams at the same time. He's an accomplished graphic artist. He took that passion and moved into teaching, but not teaching martial arts, only teaching English to inner city children and high schoolers. Today he's going to share his thoughts on his journey, but more importantly, a series of books that he wrote as a result of those experiences. Join me as I sit with my good friend, Master Keith Kelly. Strap in. As always, this is going to be a great podcast. Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast, Uncut, and I'm Herb Perez. Today, we are joined by a good friend of mine, one of my seniors, and someone that I trained with throughout the years. He's also the winner of the All-American Taekwondo Championships in Madison Square Garden, along with great notables like Chuck Norris, Michael Warren, Mark Williams, just to name a few, Gerald Robbins. His school and our school had won it, I think, more than anyone else. And I am proud of him that he had won that as well. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Master Kelly has a long history, not only in Taekwondo, but in other martial arts and as an educator, and he's written a book. So today I would like you to welcome Master Keith Kelly.
Hello. Very nice to be here with you, Grandmaster Herb Perez.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to spend time. It's been a lot of years. I want to start today with your early life and some of your martial art journey. You were born, and you'd be surprised how many people that started martial arts when we started it were born in military families and on military bases. You were born on an Air Force base. Does this have any impact on your childhood or interest in the martial arts?
Actually, it didn't. It's just a great story to tell. Once I was born in the Air Force base, my dad actually left the Air Force and came back. But the coincidence of that is that since my father was based in Korea for a number of years, he would come home and yell at me in Korean a lot. So it's ironic that I started Taekwondo, you know?
That is a great story. Can you tell us a little bit more about your early training with Grandmaster? I'm going to say this properly, most likely. Tayari Cassell?
Tayari Cassell had a kung fu program in my high school. He had a dojang, or a kwon, I guess you'd call it, in downtown Plainfield, but I couldn't afford to go there at the time. But he had a high school program there my junior year. And I would go to his classes twice a week and get instruction from him. And it was a good time.
Well, you then moved on to Taekwondo specifically. And what was it like training under Master Yousef Bilal?
All right, so I switched over to Taekwondo because Tayari had moved away by the time I had enough money to pay for classes. So I'd heard about the South Stecker Street Youth Center. It was a tough martial arts school in Plainfield where I lived. So I had a number of my friends who had trained there. So finally they convinced me to come along. And it was a tough school. The funny thing is that during that time of my life, my father had turned on me and made things difficult. So I looked at Master Bilal as my father. And this probably would save me for a lot of bad situations as I got older.
Well, a lot of us, and you'd be surprised at how many people I've spoken with, and including a good friend of mine and one of my seniors, Master Joe Corley. And he talks about the impact that martial arts has on young men, especially when they come from either single parent households or when they have an issue with their dad, and how the instructors end up being role models. But I want to move on to your competitive career, which is equally as impressive. And I was around when you were competing. Can you share some highlights or memorable moments from those years?
We had a lot of wars back then, as you well know, fighting all over Jersey, New York, Maryland, sometimes Canada. One memorable competition when I fought Tony Blanchard in the finals, Kiwan Kim's in Maryland. I think it was 84. It was 90 degrees outside. It was really hot, but I was in really good conditioning because I've been training for fight Olympic Taekwondo. But it was his hometown. So we were in sudden death for 30 minutes. and I felt fine, but they wouldn't give me the win, obviously, because he was a hometown favorite. So we fought for 30 minutes in sudden death, and then they said, okay, you guys will fight for 2 more minutes, then we'll decide the winner. At that point, I knew exactly what was going to happen. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to beat him up. So I just hit every part of his body as hard as I could for the next 2 minutes. And they gave him the win anyway, but it was fine.
I thought there was going to be a different end to that story, but that still was a great story because I fought Tony Blanchard in Madison Square Garden, and I fought him a number of times, and he was a great competitor, also an All-American, and I think he must have fought all of us. He must have fought you, Kevin Padilla, Mark Williams, obviously me, and anyone else that came through our program, because he fought everywhere just like we all did. And he was out of Ohio, if I remember correctly, from
Yes,
IJ Kim's. So just a great instructor and great master instructor and a great martial artist and a great fighter. But you undersell yourself a little bit because I remember traveling with you, and I remember the All-American Henry Cho's, and that tournament, we just mentioned before, there's some great notables, including the first one ever to win it, the amazing Grandmaster Chuck Norris, and you can only imagine his career. What was it like for you to win the All-American and join that illustrious group of great competitors, guys that we all look up to?
It was really fantastic. I fought Billy Patron for the final match in '95, and I beat Billy, and it was just an enormous, great feeling. I've been in the Garden so many times. We've all been in the Felt Forum so many times, fighting in that amazing ring, and it was just like, finally, I've done this. I won this thing. It was great.
One of the things about the All-American, which some of our listeners may not know, is the All-American wasn't just a Taekwondo tournament. It was a karate, kung fu, anything wushu, mushu, anything that you could do. So when you fight in the Garden, especially when you're younger, a yellow or a green belt, you actually fight outside in the stairways. So you fight on the things that circle the stairways, and the homeless people and the people just walking by would watch us fighting in what would be the glass windows. And then as you got higher and longer into it, you'd actually have the ability to fight inside. So you would fight inside the arena and closer to the main stage. And then finally, if you won your division, of which there were 4, those 4 black belts then fought each other for the grand championship. And that winning, and especially Billy Patron was another great competitor and tried to make it to the Olympic Games. And in my division, actually, and I always had a lot of respect for Billy. And I think he's still teaching in Connecticut. What inspired you, though, to transition from your graphic design career, which I remember, to education?
The business was so cutthroat. You'd work your way up to be an art director or something of the ilk, and the company would fold, or the partners would leave and split and just make a mess of everything. And then you go to the next business, and things weren't much better. And so my career was up and down, up and down, up and down for 12 years. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to do something that's more stable. What else can I do? I remember my last semester of college, I ran out of money. So I had to do every job I possibly could in order to be able to pay the rest of my tuition. So I was a substitute teacher from 7:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock. From 3:30 to 6:30, I was an after-school YMCA counselor. And from 7 to 9, I was the assistant instructor in the Taekwondo school. So from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, I was with kids. So I began thinking, well, maybe this is the career I should take. No. I'm an artist. I'm a graphic designer. This was born to be. Da, da, da. And then after 12 years, I said, you know what? It's time to go where I really should be.
There's a journey that happens when you choose your vocation and your avocation. And certainly for you, it sounds like your first avocation and vocation was graphic design, but then you realized your true passion for teaching. And when you're a teacher, it's not easy, but it is less hard to make a transition to continue to teach and then realize that even though your first teaching job sounded a little bit challenging, can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it led you to come to write Peace Comes to Ajani?
Well, teaching isn't a job; it's a calling. Either you are or you aren't. Um, I actually had a substitute teacher position that put me in a better standing as far as being able to make the first official job as a teacher at PS41. It was a very economically and emotionally devastated neighborhood. It was a school that was just left there. If you're a bad kid in the city, that's where they sent you. If you're a teacher who screwed up in the neighborhood, that's where they sent you. So for a lot, no, it was just a dark place to be. These kids, they didn't have a chance. A lot of them, their home lives are so messed up and just messed a bad thing. What I realized though is like everybody knows what a bully is, but they don't realize how someone becomes a bully. They're not just born like that. Their environment creates them. And that's why I wrote Peace Comes to Ajani, because I wanted to write about a kid who had become emotionally disturbed because of circumstances in his life, became a bully, and then met another kid who kind of like ended up taking him under his wing, and his family like changed his life, and now it's through Taekwondo.
And I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you actually travel to Korea as part of your research or part of a kind of a coming home to get material or ideas or inspiration for the book?
This past summer, well, I've written actually 5 books in the series.
Wow.
Each year the boys get older, a year older. So the final book, they're seniors in high school, and one of the main characters has to go to Korea, has to go to Busan to settle some business for his master. So this summer I went to Busan in order to do that research, to check out certain places and try to figure things out. Because you really can't write about something that you don't know and where you haven't been.
Well, your children's books have found a surprising audience in Korea. What's it like being a media sensation there?
That was kind of crazy. Everything is timing. At the time, in the second book, I touch on the idea of comfort women, the comfort women in Korea. And at the time, Korea was fighting with Japan, but Japan still refused to admit this ever happened. So my book was very timely at that point. I was on the cover of 3 Korean newspapers. Um, I was a 2 Korean news stations that featured me. But like I said, they had their agenda. But it was still very interesting. It's very pretty cool.
Well, in addition to being a very accomplished and successful competitor in Taekwondo, I know you are a passionate student and I believe now teacher in Eskrima. Can you tell us a little bit about your interest in Eskrima and what was it, a natural progression from Taekwondo or was it a completely different world?
Well, it's a completely different world, but after I retired from competition, I was teaching, but I still wanted to study more. I wanted to study different martial arts, and I wanted to learn a weapon. So I had heard about Rural Don Cuesta, who was teaching downtown JC at one point during Eskrima. So I decided to search him out. So I finally did, and this is like 2005. I started training with him, and Eskrima is completely different than Taekwondo. Um, we spar with a single stick, double stick. There's a lot of flowing, there's a lot of moving. The competition is based on boxing. The idea of boxing is 3 1-minute rounds, a 10-point must score system. Someone's got to get 10, someone's got to get 9, or a disarm would be a 10-8, like a knockdown. But it's completely different as far as the movement and things like that. But fighting is fighting. So you just change your strategies in one sport and just put it towards another.
Well, you've had a lot of success in these competitions. What are the biggest differences, though, in competing in Taekwondo and Eskrima?
Well, Eskrima, we have more targets to hit. Plus, I have either a single stick competition, which is a 28-inch rattan stick, or a double stick competition. I can hit the top of the head, I can hit the arms, I can hit the body, I can curve the stick so it catches you almost in the kidneys. I can hit you in the hands. So there's more target areas. But it's still just like Taekwondo, you have to block, you have to move, you have to strategize. You have to make clear shots.
So I think when I read your bio that you've decided to make this upcoming World Championships your last competition? And if so, why?
Just like Taekwondo, I competed for a long time. Then I was done. You know what I'm saying? So even the Screamer, I've competed with that since really 2006. More of a more locally, but I've competed enough internationally. Right? I fought in Budapest. I fought in the Philippines. Fought in California and Wisconsin, all different places. But it's about time to stop. But done. Um, Taekwondo has taken its toll on my body itself. Uh, from all my years of fighting, I actually have my four bottom discs have completely collapsed. It doesn't affect my Screamer, but it definitely affects my Taekwondo. So even with the Screamer there, there's some aches and pains here and there, but it's time to stop competing on that level and just continue training and teaching.
Well, what are your plans for the future, both in martial arts and perhaps other areas of your life? What is your new passion going to be? What are you going to redirect your energies towards?
That's a really good question because I have one more school year before I decide to retire, and I have to figure things out from there. I have to finish that sixth book, and the sixth book might be so long it might actually become two books. So I'm figuring out things that way. I have enough connections with my school where I might do things with different organizations in town that some of my clubs are connected to. I might become more of a teacher at this Screamer school. I'm still trying to, figure out my way.
Well, you've seemed to balance teaching, writing, and martial arts for decades. How have these different aspects of your life influenced each other?
That's interesting because I see in my later books that a lot of my teaching experiences and a lot of the children I've dealt with have ended up being partial characters in the books I've written because they've affected me in that way and I've affected them in that way. Martial arts, of course, is just a great thing, a great way to live. I've been teaching, after school Taekwondo programs since 1989, so I've reached a lot of children, and a lot of my children are now adults. One of my boys, he's 38 years old, and he started with me in my first Taekwondo class, but he was like 7, and now he brings me his son. So, I mean, everything just ties together, especially when you live in a city like Jersey City. It's a big city, but small town. Everything eventually just comes back around.
Wow. Listen, what advice would you give to young people who are interested in martial arts or creative pursuits like writing?
As far as martial arts is concerned, I think it's important that they understand that this is a life thing. It's not just kicking, punching, and living. It's about finding out who you are as a person, about growing up and becoming strong through the martial arts so that you can do whatever you want in life. That's an important thing. As far as being creative and writing, I wish more kids would write. As a high school English teacher, just trying to get them to really be concerned about their education, it's a difficult enough task. But when I find kids who want to write, I encourage it. I try to get them into programs. I try to, try to get them to make it their passion as well.
Well, you've picked, in my opinion, you've picked one of the most difficult groups of people to teach, and those are high schoolers, because at that point, children have either expanded themselves to see the world of possibility, or they've restricted and constricted their views to see that they are predestined or not able to see themselves out of the situation they're in. And I've lived back east and as you know, lived close to where all the places are that you teach and work. And I think that you probably bring hope to these children and these young adults and get them to see a better tomorrow. I think, Master Kelly, what I'd like you to think about and maybe just answer is, when you do this, and then you said that teaching is a calling, and it seems that you've been a teacher of Taekwondo, Eskrima, and certainly creative things. What is the one that brings you the most joy? What is the one that you feel the most fulfilled by? And if there is any way to describe that, what would you like to be remembered for as you exit the world of teaching in public schools?
I think most proud of probably is just being a public school teacher for the last like 25, 26 years in Jersey City. And all the kids I've reached out to, all the kids I see, all the kids who I see now that are adults and combine and say, hey, thank you. And I don't even know what they're thanking me for. I know bring up a situation. Remember you did this, did that. I may not really remember it because you don't do it for that. You do it because it's what's necessary to be done at that time.
Well, you mentioned, that you had trained in Olympic style Taekwondo, and I can remember those times. And then you certainly competed at the highest levels of what other sports that we did and what we would call point Taekwondo, which really, quite frankly, wasn't much different. Who was, in your estimation, of all those worlds that it's Taekwondo worlds, not the Eskrima worlds, who was the toughest competitor that you had to face?
Mark Williams is always the pain in the butt. Boy, I guess some of the Kiwan Kim guys, they're tough fighters, but no one else really stands out that I can think of. Because we handled pretty much everybody. I like fighting Tony. I fought Tony 3 times. The first time they gave it to him. Next 2 times he didn't make out so well. But I really can't think of anyone else. I scream at my terrible luck. My first world championship, I drew the world champion first round. So that wasn't so good. But I can't really think of anybody else.
That's okay. Listen, I want to ask you one last question. And actually 2 last questions. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about you or your journey or your passions?
Never stop dreaming. Never stop moving forward. Never stop trying to find, the next thing that you're going to do. That's how people grow old and die. You just continue moving forward. I plan on going back and drawing again and probably writing another series of books on different levels, but just keep moving forward.
Well, I'd like to ask you one more question, and it's kind of a favor. So when you finish your next book, I'd like to have you back on so you could discuss that book with us, and I don't want you to ruin the surprise. But please send me a link for your books so that I can get them up on the podcast. And I'm going to have another series of podcasts for young people, which I think you would be perfect for, because we want to bring them an understanding about what's possible in life and different careers and pursuits. And I think yours is an amazing story of someone who started in an artistic career and then decided to take his passion for teaching, actually derivative of other things, and use it to help educate people in another creative career. And then you've manifested that in yourself through your own creative writing career. So I'm going to ask you to come back and be part of that panel when we start talking to these young people about the world of possibility. You are certainly a martial artist who has taken a passion for self-defense or just the art in general, and then decided to use the skills you used and learned in that to find a way and a pathway to make a career, and then things that have been life-changing. But on behalf of the Masters Alliance podcast, I want to thank you for spending time with us today, sir.
I thank you, sir, for having me. I would be honored to come back to be in that panel, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Well, that was an amazing time for me, and I learned even more about my friend that I didn't know, and about his passion for teaching, about sharing his knowledge, and then the reasons he chose that path. And what you'll find is that in most, just like Master Kelly, we choose a path based on our avocation and our love of what we do. And then we find a way to continue that, and it may expand into other areas like teaching. And he's teaching and publishing books that help children in the inner city, help children in life just like we were helped by our instructor. Again, I am Herb Perez. This has been a Master Alliance podcast Uncut. And please check out our other podcasts with Olympic champions, Olympic influencers, but more importantly, the most experienced and passionate people in the martial arts.